So now we will talk about constructor chaining. So what is constructor chaining? Calling one constructor from another constructor is called as constructor chaining. This can be achieved using superstatement and this statement. Constructor can either have superstatement or this statement. It cannot have both. Okay, so we call one constructor from the other constructor by making use of superstatement or this statement. So this is called as constructor chaining. So let's see first what is superstatement. It should be the first statement of the constructor. It is used to invoke superclass constructor. So if you remember the note we discussed, it is about all the classes will have all the classes are subclasses of object class, right? If programmer define explicitly, that is fine. They have a superclass and subclass relationship, that is inheritance. If in case if there are no superclass, the superclass will be object class. So always this superstatement invokes the superclass constructor. Every constructor can have only one superstatement. Okay, we cannot define multiple superstatement. If programmer do not define superstatement, then compiler will add superstatement, default superstatement, which is always non-argumented. If programmer wants to define a superstatement, then it can be argumented or non-argumented. While argumented superstatement invokes the argumented superclass constructor, non-argumented superstatement invokes the non-argumented superclass constructor. So we will understand this once we write a program related to this. Let's jump to the program. So first we will see the compiler added default non-argumented superstatement example. Default superstatement example. So first we will define our own classes. Class sample, I think it should be 3. Let's say a sample 3, and there's the class body. Okay, and here we should define a constructor first. A sample 3, and within the sample a sample 3 constructor, let's not define any superstatement. So if you want to define a superstatement, it will be like this: super. Okay, so this is the superstatement. So as of now, let's comment it to understand the default compiler added non-argumented superstatement, right? So this is not defined by programmer as it is commented out. Okay, so let's define one more class A, or class B sample 3, wherein we also have a constructor B sample 3. within that um, let's say some statement. Just to print some statement, this is, and we'll also have this statement within the a sample 3 constructor. So since this is commented out, this is the first line in the constructor. Okay, and here what we are doing, we are explicitly extending this to a sample 3. Okay, so this inheritance has been achieved using extends. So now b sample 3 is a subclass of a sample 3. A sample 3 is a superclass. So in our main class, what we will do is we will start with the main class main method declaration, and then we create an object of b sample 3. bb is equal to b sample 3. So now if you understand or if you remember, in our constructor session, whenever you create an object of a class, okay, constructor gets executed. Constructors are executed whenever an object is created. Okay, so we have created an object, thereby we are executing the constructor, and what is there inside the constructor, it is also here also we do not have programmer defined super statement. Instead we have a compiler added one. So this, to understand that I have not written it, or I have not declared it, but compiler added on its own, which is a default super statement, and it is non-argumented. So in main method, once we create an object of b sample 3, it invokes the constructor of that class, which is b sample 3, and under b sample 3 what we have is super statement, which is a default statement. Okay, so this is for our reference. So whenever I execute this one, so b sample 3 constructor get executed, and since the first line is a super statement which is added by the compiler, it will call the superclass constructor. So what is the job of super statement? It is to call the superclass constructor. And what is the superclass of b sample 3 is a sample 3, and under a sample 3 we have the constructor is a sample 3, and the first line of it is super statement, which is also again added by compiler. But what is the superclass of a sample 3? Which is object, which we do not have anything explicitly. So let's assume an object class which has a object constructor, and there are no lines of codes within that object constructor. Okay, so no lines of code get executed from the super statement of the superclass, but the next line get executed. After this, the next line is print out statement. This is a sample 3. this is a copy paste error. So a sample 3 constructor get executed. And once that is done, the control comes back to the b sample 3 constructor, and this next line of code is printout statement, that is this is b sample 3 constructor. This line gets executed. So this is example for default compiler added super statement example. So let's execute this. So the moment we create an object, it calls the constructor. Constructor will have a super statement defined by the compiler, not by the programmer. That super statement is calling the superclass constructor, which is a sample 3 constructor, which also has a super statement which will try to invoke the superclass constructor, that is object class, wherein we do not have any lines of codes, so just ignore as of now. So the next line of code is this is sample 3 a sample 3 constructor. Once all the lines of code are done from the superclass constructor, it comes back to the next line of code in the b sample 3 constructor and continues, and that is this is b sample 3 constructor. Okay, now let's see programmer defined non-argumented one and then programmer defined argumented one. So here we are defining a super statement which is programmer defined. So we are not commenting it, it is written by me. So it is a programmer defined super statement. It should be always the first line of code in the within the constructor. Then you can write any other lines of code as per your convenient. Then I have class b sample 4 and b sample 4 constructor, where also we will define the super statement which is non-argumented. So this super statement is also non-argumented, this super statement is also non-argumented, and the next line of code is as per our requirement. We will define we'll say this is b sample for constructor non-argumented. What we are trying to achieve here is the moment we create a object of b sample 4, constructor gets called, and since the super statement is defined here, this will call the, which is non-argumented, this will call the non-argumented superclass constructor. I mean to say this one. So let's define main method within a main class, and here we will say bsample4 pps is equal to new bsample4. So the moment we create an object, constructor of the bsample4 gets created, and hence the super statement gets triggered, and this calls the superclass constructor, which is non-argumented. So the output is bsample4 constructor gets called, but super statement is called the, okay, correct. So the output is proper here. If you see, there is no inheritance achieved between bsample4 and asample4. So let's do that. Extends asample4. Okay, so now once you, okay, so the previous one was because of the it was not saved. Okay, so now it is saved, and we were getting only from the sample4 class, since there was no inheritance achieved between a sample and b sample. So now the expectation is a sample4 constructor and b sample4 constructor. Okay, so a sample4 constructor, and this is b sample4 constructor and non-argumented. Okay, so let's observe the one more topic here, that is in the same class. What I'll try to do is, within the same constructor, okay, better let's take a different one. I mean the new program for non-argumented argumented programmer defined one. The previous one I set it as a argumented, right? Sorry, this is supposed to be non-argumented one. Okay, let's refactor this. So to refactor, right click, go to refactor and rename, make it non-argumented, and finish. Okay, so that was of non-argumented, right? So non-argumented super statement. So now we will create an argumented one. Argumented super example. Class a sample 5, whereas we will have a sample 5 constructor and super. Let's not write it in this manner. Let's ignore the super statement here. Or okay, let's have a super statement. So this is just to demonstrate the concept of argumented super statement. Okay, let's say 10. Sorry. So let's define, okay, let it be. So we're just passing some argument here, super 5. we will do one thing, we will define in the B sample, because from there we are invoking, right? So yeah, we can do in different ways. So okay, this we will mark it as we'll define arguments for constructor int I. Okay, and another one is super statement is defined, it is okay. And what we will do here is system.output. This is integer augmented a sample file constructor, a sample file constructor. Okay, next one is again we will define one more constructor, a sample file double augmented constructor. Super statement can be declared or cannot be declared. Let's ignore as of now. Copy the print statement. This is double augmented superclass a sample3 constructor. Okay, let's have class b sample5. Just build the relationship using extends keyword. Inheritance extends what? A sample5. Okay, and here what is the problem here? Yeah, so here it is by default it is showing, since we have a superclass constructors with integer argument double augmented, it by default showing error, but our intention is also the same. So let's create a constructor. Here we will say super 5, thereby it calls the integer augmented superclass constructor. Okay, that was my intention. And let's create one more constructor with integer augmented here, meaning let's say int k, and here what I'll do in the super statement, I'll just say 10.5, something like that. So just to differentiate between the two different constructors, this is non-argumented and this is integer augmented. And in non-argumented I have a super statement with the value integer I as a parameter, whereas in the integer augmented b sample5 constructor I have super statement with a parameter 10.5 as a double value. So in main class we have to achieve our intention, how to call the superclass constructor of the using the subclass super statement. So we'll create a object of b sample5 in such a way that, so let's define main method first, and here create an object of bsample5 bb is equal to new sample5. So this will call the constructor of the bsample5 which is non-argumented, and I also want to call bb is equal to new sample5 with integer value. So just to say 100, some integer I am passing. My intention is to call the integer argumented constructor of the sample. Okay, so that was my intention. So operator was wrong, is equal to okay, so two variables with the same bb1, let's make it bb2. Okay, so try to understand here. So why I have defined int k in this constructor as a argument is, whenever I am calling I want to differentiate these two, and each has super statement, one with integer argumented and one with double argumented. So the integer argumented will call the integer argumented superclass constructor, meaning this one, whereas the double argumented super statement will call the double argumented superclass constructor. So just observe this. So if you want to differentiate, let's comment out this one also, so that our intention will only get executed here is this is integer argumented a sample5 constructor. So let's execute and observe. So this is integer argumented a sample5 constructor. So in the reverse we'll comment this one and we will uncomment this one. So now we will expect the double argumented a sample5 constructor. This is double argumented a sample5 constructor. So let's execute together. This is integer argumented and this is double argumented. So this is the example for argumented superstatement constructor chaining.